All right, we got two more sessions here before we go to lunch. Now, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did, but this next one is truly special for me too. You see, if there's one company I admire in the world, it's Amazon. I spend probably a lot of my time talking about Amazon as a real role model in innovation today. Amazon has taught us that it's not about customer satisfaction anymore, it's about obsession with the customer. So today we've got Hugh Nguyen Trieu, who is the CEO of the Disruptive Group that builds businesses. He's also a fellow at Oxford University and Imperial College, who's going to do a fireside chat with someone who is actually the global head of innovation, policy, and communications, yes, for Amazon. Paul Meissner. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Hugh and Paul.
Good afternoon, and welcome to this session where we'll talk about innovation in the Amazon way. Can you hear me at the end of the room? Yeah? Perfect. So I'm very excited to be here. I'm sure you're very excited too, but I intend to learn a lot today. And let me give you a bit of background before introducing Paul. Last year, I lectured about a specific topic, which was called the Amazonification of finance. We won't talk about finance today, but it could be the Amazonification of pretty much everything. That could be finance, healthcare, travel, etc. Why did I use that example last year? It's because Amazon is such a rich company in terms of their innovation, in terms of their business models, and it's having such a huge impact on a lot of industries. And when I talked about the Amazonification of finance, there were 3 points that I discussed about. The first one being, if we think of Amazonification, does it mean companies like Amazon, like tech giants, getting into other industries, like finance, like travel, like healthcare? The second point was in terms of Amazonification, was it in terms of what we would call platformization? Is the model of platform, which Amazon also uses now, a new type of business model which we can apply to a lot of different industries? And the third point, being just in terms of normal innovation, which Amazon did when they started, is the concept of unbundling and rebundling. You would start to innovate in a very precise vertical. For example, books, when Amazon started. In finance, it could be other things. And as you grow, you offer more and more services. So I'm really delighted to be here with you, Paul. And let me start with a very simple question. Yeah. Your title is Vice President of Global Innovation Policy and Communication. What does it mean?
How about I explain it to my mom? So what I do is try to ensure that both inside and outside the company, our culture of innovation at Amazon is maintained after all these years. I'm a 19-year veteran. And as the company has grown, I just want to ensure that internally, as we've brought on a lot of new teammates, that they also understand how we go about innovation at Amazon. It's a really important factor.
Yeah. And I have a very simple question for you,
yeah.
Which is, what is the innovation strategy of Amazon?
Obsess over customers, be willing to accept failure. That's simple. So it works out internally as a set of processes, and so it's not just a matter of creativity or cool factor. There actually is a process around which we innovate. Yeah. The most clear manifestation of it is what we call the working backwards doctrine, and that's where if today we have an idea of a new product or service that we want to offer sometime in the future, say it's 6 months from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, today we sit down and write the press release that we want to release 6 months, 2 years, 5 years from now, and we write it. A press release. Now, this does really 3 things for you, Huey. One is it holds you accountable, right? When you make a decision that you want to offer something to your customers, even if it's really hard, even if it's in the distant future, write it out today and work towards that. Second, it's written in customer language. It's not gobbledygook or all the tech things that you're going to be doing behind the scenes to make it available to her. It's what's in it for her. It's in her language. And lastly, and this is probably the most sublime point of it all, is that because you're writing a press release today for something to be released sometime maybe years from now, you're admitting that what you want to do is impossible today. Otherwise, you'd write the press release and send it out in the morning. So what we recognize is we write this release, and then we must invent stuff, working backwards from that final product. We must invent stuff that is not possible today.
Could you give us an example of such innovation? How did it work internally at Amazon? Where did it start from? Where did the press release come to, and what was the end result?
Yeah, so I'll give you two. I'll give you one that's already being released in a limited form, and another that's still a work in progress. One of them is called Amazon Go, and the concept of Amazon Go is a physical store in which you can walk in, pick what you want to buy, and then just walk out. There's no till, there's no cash register, there's no queue to wait in. And if you think about this, we're overturning hundreds, if not thousands of years of human precedent, where you would find something in a storehouse somewhere, you would have to wait to give the proprietor of the store the money before you could walk out. That's a bad customer experience. You found what you wanted. Why should you have to wait to give your money? That's something that probably goes back to, I don't know, caveman days, when you walked into a cave, you found the animal skin you wanted, and you had to wait to give the beads to the guy who owns the animal skin. So this is thousands of years we've put up with this, and we said, no, that's a bad thing. Our customers would love to be able to walk into a store, find what they want, and just walk out. Now, it turns out that the technology behind that is really hard. It involves artificial intelligence, machine learning, sensor fusion, and it's hard to do, but it already is working. We have 3 stores open in Seattle right now. One just opened in Chicago, and we have plans for many more. The work in progress is one that I was part of in the early days in writing this press release, has to do with a future drone delivery service called Amazon Prime Air. And it turns out that making a package delivery to a customer within 30 minutes of an order is really hard to do. It's almost impossible to do using roads because of traffic congestion or distance or whatever, but by using unmanned aerial vehicles, aerial drones, we think we can do it. And this is another one that turns out to be extremely difficult, and it's a work in progress. And this also involves a lot of machine learning and things like sensor fusion. And who knew that Amazon would be involved in propeller design? We are. We're designing propellers for drones.
Yeah. If I go back to the example of Amazon Go,
yeah.
In terms of the innovation process, where did it come from? Where did the idea come from? Who had to validate it? Who put resources in it?
Yeah, so the idea came from recognizing that technology exists today in general form, although it didn't exist in total form at that point, that would allow this to happen, to get rid of this ancient bad customer experience of having to wait in a queue to pay money. And so we thought, well, okay, let's give it a try. Let's write out a press release that says you can walk into a store, get what you want, and just walk out. It's that simple, and it was written in customer terms, and so it didn't talk about sensor fusion. It didn't talk about all the machine learning that would have to go into designing a system that would get smarter and smarter over time to make it more efficient and more accurate. It just talked about figuring a way for customers at some point in the future to be able to walk into a store and then just walk out. The approval process within Amazon involves often writing what we call a 6-page narrative, and it forces the proponents of a new idea to actually write in prose what their idea is, and then it's reviewed in typically an hour-long meeting by all levels within the company, mid-level all the way to the most senior in the company. That's how we make decisions, is by first of all spending the first half hour of a meeting reading a prose narrative, discussing it if there is discussion needed, and then making a decision. So what does this do to you? It seems like, it's cumbersome in the sense that it's harder to write prose than it is to write bullet points, but at the same time, by reading it at the beginning of a meeting, every one of the decision makers in the meeting is equally informed at that point in time and ready to make a decision. So it makes us much more efficient that way. The other thing about decision making at Amazon I think is particularly important, especially as enterprises grow in time. And that is the recognition that there are really two basic kinds of decisions an enterprise makes. On one hand, there are the decisions that if you make the decision and you do it, it's very hard to undo it, right? So Jeff refers them to as a one-way door where you can go through but you can't get back. I'm an electrical engineer. I think of it as a diode. Electricity flows in only one direction, not the other. But the whole idea is that if you do it, it's hard, if not impossible, to undo it. Those kinds of decisions spend a lot of time. Get as much data as you can before you do it because it's a big deal if you get it wrong. But the vast majority of decisions in a large enterprise are not that kind. The vast majority of decisions are ones that you can make, and if it turns out that they're a mistake or a failure, you can just undo it and walk back from it. And those ones you want to make fast. One trap that larger enterprises fall into is treating all decisions as if they were these one-way doors, when in fact, sometimes it's best to fail fast and just move back and reverse the decision.
Yeah, you talked about culture. And wanted to ask you a question about this, because when I think of Amazon, if you look at the results, Amazon is a very innovative organization. There are a lot of innovative things which me as a consumer I would see.
Yeah.
But also when I think of Amazon, I think more of a company which is very good with processes. It's all about processes. So innovation which comes with, I would call, creativity versus processes. How do you reconcile this, or where do you reconcile this?
Yeah, process versus creativity. It's both at Amazon. It's process that drives creativity. It's the process of writing that press release and then working backwards from the date, recognizing that you must innovate. It's the process to say you must be creative to figure out how you get there. The other thing is, I think it's particularly important for you, you have to, it seems to us anyway, at Amazon, and by the way, this is certainly the Amazon way of innovating. It's certainly not the only way to innovate, and it may not even be the best way. It simply is Amazon's way. And we tell our fellow workers that, look, this is not religion. We're not telling you that this is the only way and you must believe it. It's more like, hey, this is how we do it at Amazon. And one way we do it is to continuously innovate. I think this is one of the problems that large enterprises run into, is they wait to innovate until it's absolutely necessary. Say they've been sitting on a great product or service for 30 years and everybody loves it and they've made a lot of money over all this time, and suddenly there's some threat, a disintermediator, some disruptor coming in and possibly destroying that line of business or at least hurting it. Well, if at that point, that first enterprise must innovate just to survive. And if they fail, well, that might be the end of the company. And so at Amazon, we take big bet innovations all the time. A lot of them have failed. Jeff personally credits himself for billions of dollars worth of failures. Failure is part of innovation at Amazon, but the point is, we'll make big bets, but we'll never bet the company.
And so in terms of having this culture, who innovates at Amazon? Who are the people responsible for innovation at Amazon?
Everyone. So we have over 500,000 employees at this point. Everyone is supposed to be thinking about innovation at some level. There's not some skunk works tucked away somewhere and they do all the innovating and all the rest of us go and do the implementing. Everyone. I have 3 patents. That doesn't make me a big shot at Amazon. But there are people who are even working in the warehouses. They conduct kaizens, for example, and these kaizens are looking always for continuous improvement or perhaps even imitation. The bigger innovations are typically bigger things and continuous improvement. But at the same time, everyone is expected to think in that mindset, and it's all that customer-obsessed innovation. How do we make it better for customers?
So if I worked at Amazon, for example, as an employee, how do I innovate? How can I make an impact? And how am I measured on this? Because I'm sure that if I do an amazing innovation, it works really well, then I might be promoted. If it doesn't work, then what happens?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a set of what we call our leadership principles, although they're supposed to apply to everyone within the company, just not the senior leadership. And they're basically our tenets of operation, how we do business. We have one that's called our right, a lot. Our right, comma, a lot. Well, that means that it's good to be right, but it doesn't say our right all the time. It doesn't even say right most of the time. It says right a lot. That means you can be wrong a lot. Failure is expected, and here's why. To truly innovate, to truly do something new, you must experiment. And an experiment that you know how it's going to turn out isn't an experiment at all. I think some of us get confused because we had chemistry class or physics class in high school where you conducted experiments. Well, they weren't really experiments. The teacher knew how it was supposed to turn out. You probably knew how it was supposed to turn out. That's not an experiment. An experiment is something you do, you try it, and you don't know if it's going to succeed or fail. And so in order to innovate, you have to be able to experiment, and to experiment, you have to be able to fail. So failure is welcome in the context of experimentation. Now, to be clear, failure doesn't mean, forgetting to set your alarm clock and never doing your assignments and sleeping on the job. That's not the point. It's in the context of innovating and experimenting. Failure is expected and perfectly fine, accepted.
In the way you say it, it sounds very simple.
Yeah.
But the reason why we're here, and yesterday we're at the panels for open innovation, it seems very difficult for large organizations to innovate. So what does Amazon do differently from other organizations, or what kind of lessons can we learn or teach?
Yeah, well, I'll be repetitive. One is customer obsession. You don't innovate just for the sake of innovating. There's nobody that's sitting around saying, what can I design today? I mean, it's not that at all. It's like, what customer problem can we address and help them? So it's very focused on customers. And if the case can't be made that customers will like this thing that we're working on, then we don't work on it. That's what we're focused on. The other is the willingness to fail. I think large organizations and individuals, understandably within those large organizations, are afraid of failing. They think that their boss won't like that and that they will get somehow criticized for that. But we've had many failures along the way. We started selling things online with an auction site about the time I joined in late '99, and that was an abysmal failure. It just didn't work. Wall Street hated it too because they said, wait a minute, you've got a retail business and you're allowing third parties to come onto your site and take away your retail sales? That's crazy. And we said, well, we think our customers will like it, both our current buyer customers, but also a new set of seller customers. Well, auctions failed. We replaced it with a bad form of retail. That failed too. And then we ended up with what is today Marketplace. So if you go to an Amazon website and you search for a particular product, it's typically for sale by multiple sellers. And the lowest cost seller is getting the privileged position, even above Amazon retail businesses. And well over half the products sold through Amazon websites now are not sold by Amazon. They're sold by somebody else.
And a lot of organizations, when they talk about innovation, they talk about return on investment. They talk about metrics. Should we talk about return on investment in innovation? And is there a way to measure innovation?
Yeah, so it's a hard one. Certainly we're aware of financials, right? We have to be aware of financial returns and those sorts of things, but we have a very long-term view. We're willing to experiment with losses for long periods of time. Amazon Prime is a really good example. We just didn't know if it was going to work or not. The whole idea was to give customers free 2-day shipping on a large variety of products. And we didn't know. We thought our customers would really like it, but we didn't know if it would pay off. And in the early years of Amazon Prime, we were just taking huge losses because we were spending money going out the door to shippers just to get the things there faster. And yet we didn't know if this was going to be something that would be long-term beneficial to customers. But we went ahead and did it because we had a gut feeling that this would be something our customers would love. And it turns out they do love it. And now there are tons of other benefits for being a Prime member.
Thanks a lot. And in terms of large organizations, again, would you have, if you had just one single advice for large organizations to innovate, what would it be?
Yeah, do it all the time. Don't wait. Right? You got to be doing it now, today. That press release thing I told you about? There's no person in this room that couldn't have 1 or 2 or 3 of their own personal press releases in their desk drawer. Now, maybe none of them, or just maybe one of them, ever gets released out as a press release, but if you can't answer to yourself in a narrative or a press release in customer terms what you're doing today on behalf of your customers in the future, you got to wonder whether you should be doing it at all. So write yourselves a press release.
And just before we entered, we talked about acquisitions. We talked about a different way of innovating than just internal innovation. How do you look at it in terms of innovation, entering into new businesses, etc.? Is it part of the same type of innovation? Is it different for you?
Well, we are innovating constantly internally in trying to provide new products and services. Amazon Web Services, our cloud computing business, for example, began as solving an internal problem where we had...
The reason why also I'm asking this question is that a lot of banks are very afraid that you're getting into banking.
Well, they shouldn't be afraid. If they're innovating on behalf of their customers, they should be fine. They should be just fine. But look, seriously, in the terms of acquisitions, we haven't had that many big ones, right? There was Whole Foods recently, there was Kiva Systems a few years ago, there was Zappos about 10 years ago, and we would always have a very hard look at their cultures to see how well they would work as part of the Amazon family, but most of the innovation we do is internal. We really focus on teams empowered to grow outwards, and if you think about it, when I joined the company, the most innovative thing we were doing at that moment's time was selling VHS tapes. Obviously, the scale and the scope of the company have grown over 19 years, but the way we think about innovation, the way we go about it, really hasn't changed.
Yeah, I see the time is up. Now, would you agree we continue for 2-3 more minutes? No, as long as we have Paul, on stage. And so now let's talk more, not just about Amazon, but you've been with Amazon for 19 years.
Yeah.
And so, Amazon was started in 2004, 5?
4 was when it was incorporated, 5 was the first sales, mid-2005.
So how was Amazon when you joined Amazon? And we know the big success it is today. Going back into time, what do you think really made Amazon the success that it is today?
Well, a willingness to adopt the culture and to think long term. And the culture of customer obsession, I'll be honest, when I went out to interview in October of '99, I wondered how much of this was a marketing slogan, and it became crystal clear right from the very beginning that this is serious. This is how we think about things. It really is a customer obsession. So really buying into that component of the culture and the long-term view, where we told investors from the very beginning, if you're looking for quarterly returns, don't invest in us. That's not our kind of a company. We're thinking long term. I do get a kick out of this, and you're from the financial world. He's a really an expert in fintech. But I will tell you this, when I read reports in various newspapers about quarterly results time, I see headlines like X company had a great quarter. Well, okay, maybe their financial results drove up the share price that quarter, but that great quarter was based on decisions made 3 or 4 years ago. It wasn't stuff done in that quarter. This was a long-term process to get to the point to have that great quarter. And so this is kind of a warning to companies that are, quote, fast followers who will see their competitors doing something and then they'll imitate it and try to do it a little bit better. Well, here's the thing. If a product comes out this quarter from a competitor and you say, hey, that's a great idea, we should do that too, well, you're already 3 or 4 years behind.
And I'm sure we have a lot of entrepreneurs in the room.
Yeah.
So 2 questions for you, which is, as an entrepreneur, what do you do with Amazon? How do you work with Amazon? Do you want to work with Amazon? What are the different ways, for these entrepreneurs to work with Amazon?
Yeah, so one of the most gratifying things we have at working at Amazon is being able to provide tools to entrepreneurs to do their own businesses. Yeah. And so Amazon Web Services is an obvious example. You don't need to go out and invest a lot of CapEx in compute equipment and pay a lot of software developers right from the start. And especially as an entrepreneur or a startup, what you lack is capital. That's the hardest thing to come by. And so if you can transform that capital into operating expenses, pay as you go kind of thing, is so much more efficient. Other tools that we've offered, of course, are for sellers. We have a marketplace. We have fulfillment operations. If you're a publisher, we have Kindle Direct Publishing. You don't even have to go through the traditional publishing gatekeeper. You can just publish whatever you want.
Yeah, I see Mercedes who's going to kill us in 2 minutes because we're way up our time. Another question for entrepreneurs. Any advice you would give to these entrepreneurs in the room, on how to be successful and how to become the next Amazon?
Yeah, so one of the things that Jeff used to tell us early on was work hard, work long hours, and work smart. 2 out of the 3 is not good enough. You have to do all 3. And that kind of spirit has been maintained in the company. We're not slackers at this point, but it really was an admonition that you can't just be smart or just be hardworking or just, work 24/7. You have to do all three.
And the last question, if you had to choose just one single area of innovation which you think will be very, very big in the future, whether it's a technology, whether it's a business model, whatever it is.
Well, artificial intelligence is going to change everything. Everything that humanity does is going to change, hopefully for the better, with artificial intelligence. And so watch that space. I mean, if you're doing something that you think is pretty good, try applying some machine learning to it to make it better.
Thank you very much, Paul, for your insight. Thank you very much, audience.
You're welcome.
Salah.